Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The show is about to begin.
Talk about podcasts.
Welcome to the Center for Technological Innovation and Entrepreneurship podcast. My name is Pierre Jean, and today I will be your host. So in this episode, we're going to talk about tech, and we're gonna touch the angle of employer perspective. And for that, I'm delighted to have with us Alexandre Vaz. And Alexandre Vaz is the managing director at Mercedes-Benz IO in Portugal. So Alexandre, let's tell us a little bit about you. Welcome here for this podcast, and tell us about yourself and also about Mercedes-Benz IO.
Okay, so first, thank you for the invitation to talk here. It's a pleasure to be talking with you, Pierre. So, as you said, I'm now responsible for Mercedes-Benz IO in Portugal. Quickly, I have 12 years of management and IT consulting. So I work at AMS, CGI, Oracle, Boston Consulting Group. And before I joined Mercedes-Benz IO, I actually had a startup called Liquid, and that's actually how I end up in the Mercedes world, because I was trying to sell the company to Daimler at the time, and I failed on that. But I actually they invited me to open the hub here in Lisbon, and that's how I end up here.
So you're an entrepreneur as well?
Yeah, in the end, besides Liquid, I also had a beer business before the beer fever started here in Portugal. So I was trying to import beers from all over the world. So gave me a little bit of learning what is to create a company that is not digital and that has physical products that go bad, versus trying to create a company that is digital, and so that you can scale up much faster and without having the logistics and the bureaucratic process on the way. So yeah.
Okay, excellent. So, and you've been with Mercedes IO for how long now?
So it started in 2017. It officially opened May 2017. So 3.5 years now.
Okay. And for our audience, mainly, there are a lot of students and people also from the industry. Can you tell us a little bit what you guys are doing before we dive into more questions? What is Mercedes-Benz IO doing here in Lisbon currently?
Sure. So Mercedes-Benz IO. So if you think about it, as you probably know, Mercedes is part of Daimler. So and Daimler is a huge group that has 300,000 employees, has revenues the same of Google. So it's really, really big. So, and it's divided in three big companies. It has cars and vans, you have truckers and buses, and you have financial services. So cars and vans is what you call Mercedes-Benz, as you know it. So, and within Mercedes, we focus on all that is digital for marketing, sales, and after sale. So if you go to a website of Mercedes, wherever country you are, you see the digital part. So, and this part is like you're going to search for a car, you're going to know more information. So this is our work, or it's the beginning of our work. Then you're going to sell a car online or sell a service. This is also what we do. Or after you become our customer, actually you need services, you need support, or you need to do upgrades, I need to go to the repair shop. So all those things that are digital, it's our work. What we have is a platform that has 40 plus products, all independent on one side, but all talking with each other, so you can give you the full experience, and that we manage within a Mercedes-Benz IO. So think about it like a product could be something like booking a test drive. So, and you could choose the car you want in the location you want. It could be searching for a new car or searching for a used car. It could be as simple as finding a dealer, or you can go to the commerce part. Like another product could be buy a new car. or another product could be buy a used car, or actually configure a car. All those things are independent products. And then what you have in the product is that you put it on the digital channels. So it can be in the website, it can be in an app, it could be in Mercedes Me, and eventually, and that's where we're going now, these products could be embedded in the car. Like I want a product as simple as a dealer locator, that it seems simple. In the end, you can use it in multiple ways. You can put it within the car. You can connect it to the test drive. And then when you find the dealer, it already tells you what are the cars that are available for a test drive, for instance. So that's what we do. So what we do, we manage, or we internalize all the digital knowledge in-house, because everything was being done by consulting companies, outsourcers. And now we are transforming those digital platforms into the future.
Wow, interesting. So, and tell us a little bit in terms of in Portugal, for all these activities that you've been describing, which are mainly digital part. Okay, on that, this is your business, the digital part. Is how many people do you have currently in Portugal here, either in Lisbon or other location? Are you only located in one location, or you have more than one location in Portugal?
No, right now we are just right now we're just only in Lisbon. Maybe it's not correct because everybody's at home, so people might be in multiple locations. But so our office is in Lisbon. We are one around. It keeps growing, but around I'm going to say 180. So 180 persons. We'll keep growing for the next years for sure. And we have a lot of different types of roles in the company. It's when you talk about digital, you need to consider the full scope. So we have a lot of developers, of course. We have the front end, back end, mobile, quality assurance developers. We have Scrum Masters, we have product owners, support engineers, UX designers, all the functions that you need to make this company operate, from HR, recruiting, everything that you need. So there's the full scope. So we can manage the products that we independently. We can do everything by ourselves. That's kind of the goal.
Okay, so I think it was an excellent introduction. Actually, we understand your business, we understand your line of business, we understand where you are, how many people are currently working in Portugal, and the next question is a little bit. You gave me a hint, and will be about recruiting, okay, or hiring. We heard different, comments, or from different people from different industries, that saying it's getting more and more difficult to recruit, and because the resources are scarce. And so what's your view on hiring and recruiting? Are you guys doing that? Do you have difficulties? And what kind of if it's the case, if you're actually hiring, what kind of people, a professional and qualities inside this potential hire would you be looking at?
Okay, so if you think about our company, the most important thing is the people, right? It's not, we are not selling products, we are selling, or we are actually if we have good people, the outcome will be good. So having the right people, it was always critical from the beginning. And it was so critical that from day one we decided that we were not going to use external agencies. It was, for us, it's such a critical process for the company that we said, okay, we should have this function in-house. We should actually do it ourselves. So, and then the second part is, how do you do it? And the way we decided to do it at the time, from a positioning and communication perspective, was to actually try something new, something different. And that's why maybe some of you have heard we did this interview crazy interview type of videos. We did the speed dating where you were being interviewed in an AMG that was drove by a professional pilot. So it was quite funny to see the reactions of people, of real candidates, while they were trying to answer questions and the car was going crazy. We did a video for Halloween. Well, it was, and we shoot it at night, so people were not aware what was going on. So it was actually rather funny. We did it in a slide. So we always try to communicate in a quite different way, and it's not because we have a key asset that maybe not all the other companies have. That we are Mercedes. So, and we are aware that it's a quite powerful brand. So. And we should use it. So we should use it in a creative way. So part of the communications that we are hiring was done by using this type of viral videos. Of course, then there's another part of the recruiting that is being done by organizing meetups, by going to the biggest events and participating in there. So, but all in all, what we do know is that we always got a lot of CVs, and so in sourcing the CVs, people actually sending their CVs here was never an issue from our side, and probably because of the brand and what we're doing, of course. So what we needed to do is to communicate that we existed. That was the number one. But second, like, okay, if I know what I need, what the roles I need, if I'm actually able to get CVs, then what should be the process to get in? And since quality of the people it's so important, we need to do it in a way that we would make sure we wouldn't make mistakes. So it's not an easy process to get in, to be honest. So our entrance rate is quite low. For instance, for a developer, you need to go through a challenge that takes a few hours to do. Then you'll go through a technical interview. Then you'll go through a fit interview. So we actually make it a little bit on purpose. That is tough. So you first. And what are you looking for? Maybe that was your question also. When we hire people,
what you mentioned was super interesting to tell us what's your sourcing process and the way you do, these viral videos. How many viewers did you get on the one that was most viewed? Actually, do you know?
Yeah, I think like the speed dating. At the time, like after the first 2 weeks, I think we got to 2 million now views.
Wow. Impressive.
But it's actually it continued to still. Sometimes I still receive from people I know in other countries. Oh, I just saw your video, and I'm like, really? It's been 2 years that this video is out, and but still, it's still out there somewhere, having the life of its own.
So you get a good sourcing. You're telling us that you don't have issues with receiving CV. And then the way you kind of identify the people that would be a fit for the company, for the technical guys, you're going through, challenges, interviews, etc. But the question was, in terms of the person, imagine that, are you looking for something specific, something that is linked to Mercedes-Benz IO DNA, besides the technical skills?
No, so we look for three things in people, in everybody. It doesn't really matter that if you're coming out of college or if you are a really senior person. So first is that you need to know your stuff, meaning if you are a developer, for instance, we are expecting something like if you're coming from a college or if you have 5 years experience. So whatever the time that we've been working, your knowledge should reflect that. Second thing should be your ability to learn or your will to learn and to grow, because we are in an industry that is always changing and growing, and I'm sorry for this noise. I'm going to try to change location because it's on me. But what we want is people that are willing to grow with us, like in the tech industry, in the digital industry. If you are not willing to change and to adapt and to learn new stuff, we're going to have an issue. So we want people that are interested in in learning and changing the same way we need to. Third topic, and as important as the other two, is all about the fit and the cultural fit, and this is really more critical than sometimes people realize.
And what does that mean? What does that mean? I'm interested about this dimension. What does that mean, the fit? Yeah.
The fit is not that you could be the best developer, and we had the case like we have a really amazing developers, but they were like single heroes, you know. They don't. They see themselves as the best, and they are not willing to learn with others. They're not willing to teach others. And if you're not willing to actually be part of a team, so you'll not survive well in MBIO. So that's we don't hire. Like we kind of joke saying no assholes allowed in the company. So it's all joking only, and that's a little bit. And also we look for people that like actually to be entrepreneurs, to have ideas. So and that's because the type of company that we've built, the structure that we have. We don't have a traditional structure, so we don't have a pyramidal structure with hierarchies. What we have is something called an holacracy, so it's a flat organization. And in this type of organizations, if you're not willing to take action, to take risk, to make things happen, honestly, you will not be happy on one side. And actually it will not really providing that much value to the company. So the fit part is really critical for us, as much as the technical component. Because if you are a person that can learn, then it's fine, you know, because you will learn whatever you need to learn.
Well,
but
I'm impressed about your, first of all, that you have the recruiting in-house and you don't use agencies. Not because they're not doing a good work, but because you prioritize recruiting for Mercedes-Benz IO and you do it yourself in-house. And after also the point about, obviously you have to know your stuff, the ability to learn and grow, because everything, I mean, the only thing that we know is that everything's going to change and everything is moving. So if you're not able actually to learn and grow and adapt, it's going to be difficult. And the last point was about I would say the cultural fit in Mercedes-Benz IO. And tell me one thing on that is, the podcasts that we have here is behind the podcast we have a business school, Católica Lisbon. You mentioned developers, etc. But do you have people also that have business background in your company?
In the end, more and more. So first, actually, for very funny, it's like that we have developers that study multiple things, from psychology, cinema, and business. So you don't really need to have a degree in coding if you want to actually be a good developer. And then usually, sometimes product owners, Scrum Masters actually come from a more business-oriented background. Of course, the business operations also have a lot of people with a business background. And now we are starting to have more, it is just starting now, to have more roles regarding marketing specific, business-related. So I think we're going to see this type of backgrounds more and more. One thing that is quite interesting, and that's actually for me it was a big learning, is that, and it's weird that we're telling you this, that you are from Católica, but in the end, I don't really care what is the background of the person in the perspective that doesn't mean that much. In the end, it could be that you end up having more people with a specific background or a specific school, but any person can actually be quite good if coming here, no matter the background, because if you're going through a challenge, you need to prove that you can do it. And sometimes what we end up noticing is that some schools are better in preparing the students to be ready to work. Other schools are quite good, but people that come work here need a little bit more time. It seems like they are going more to the theoretical part of it. So it's quite interesting the impact that a school can have in a person from when he enters the job market. Some schools are quite good in preparing students for interviews, for instance, and you noticed if that person, and that's a good thing actually. If you so in the end, what we want is the person itself, not the CV. The CV is just a really small part of sometimes it's just to put the foot on the door. But in the end, after you get an invitation to the challenge, to an interview, the CV, that doesn't really matter, to be honest.
And with all these points that you mentioned, it looks like working at Mercedes-Benz IO is a nice place to be. And some people sometimes in other companies are talking about retention rate and the difficulty they have to retain talent. Is that something also you're facing on your side, or you don't have any problems with retention?
I wouldn't go as deep and say that I don't have any problems. I think retention is a hot topic in all companies. It's not a key issue for us. We invest a lot in terms of giving the best conditions and to everybody. And I think that's the reflection of the culture of the company. Culture is more than culture eating strategy at breakfast. Actually, culture is strategy. And what we mean is that and if you think, what does a person want in a company, what do you expect? So of course there's the financial part. I'm going to take this one out of equations. Every company has their own policy regarding that, and we also have that. But that you want people want to have a place where they can have autonomy and to have an impact, and the people want to work in a place where they can grow and learn new stuff. And that's the type of organization tries to foster this autonomy and self-responsibility and freedom. So that's the part of the organization that gives you that. And the part of growing, that's something we need, that people want to do. We have something that, of course, it was inspired by Google, but it's called Impact Time in MBIO, where we give 20% of the time of everybody to work on side projects besides their day-to-day product. And this side project, this side project is something that everyone can decide on their own they want to spend it. It could be in a social responsibility project, because we already have a few, usually in the digital area. It could be that you're going to work in a parallel project because you had an idea that could impact Daimler or could impact MBIO itself. So you actually are free to create a team and have the role as you want in that team to come up with that product. Or you could be that you want to improve the way we do recruiting, and it doesn't matter, in the front end area. So you come out, look, I think we could do better. I'm going to spend my time in creating a new challenge, and then I'm going to propose it. So the spirit of the culture of the company, or the spirit of the organization, is always anybody can have any idea. And if there's no logical reasons not to go against it, the idea will go through. Okay. And that's what we're trying to do.
And in general, I think I didn't know that you guys were doing that as well. And in terms of the numbers, almost all the employees is adherence on that, and a lot of employees are doing this kind of projects, their side projects, or only a few?
So there's two things to it. So everybody loves the idea at first, then it's like something. So everybody wants to have that freedom. Then I think what happens is it goes through stages. So sometimes you are so engaged in your product already that you don't want to actually to get out of the product because you just want to do that. And that's actually not a bad thing, because it means that you are actually very, very enthusiastic and about doing something. So usually people, and we have this metric, so we give 20%, probably on average people use 15% of their time for doing this stuff. So could be better, to be honest. I think there's still some work to do. I think the challenge in our organization is to make sure that everybody understands that the freedom exists, that you can do much more than you realize. because it's so different from the traditional setup that that we need to do. And I'm really sorry. I think the noise is coming from my office. There's a construction.
It's okay. It's okay.
It's okay. If you cannot hear it. Okay. So I think that's the challenge, and the challenge on getting in Mayo is that in the first couple of months, you needed at least 2 months to understand how we are organized, how to take advantage of everything, and to understand that you don't need to ask for permission to do stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know. And
so I think with all the information that you gave and you shared, and a little bit, how is the recruiting, the life, what kind of people you're looking for? If you had now and finishing on the potential hiring, or people that one would like to apply to Mercedes-Benz IO, is what kind of advice would you give to a student trying to enter the job market, but Mercedes-Benz IO? And also, there's always a choice at the beginning that I'm going to choose this company because they provide me with more X% of salary than the others, but the career is different, etc. So you have a lot of experience in moving from different consultancy companies and creating your own startup, working with Oracle, that is a large business actually. So you've been going through different phases and different experiences. If you had to tell someone, what kind of advice, if you had to choose between different jobs offer, what would you say, Alexandre?
So first, and I think your question also was also, so the first part is like, while you are studying, I think having side hobbies or side business, it's always a good thing. It's like, it shows that you are an entrepreneur, that you try to build something. So while you are studying, I always advise you to do other stuff besides just focusing on the study itself, because also it's a way for you to start learning what is out there, if you want, from college. Then when deciding where to go to work, which company you want to work for, and maybe as long as the financial situation is the offer is good enough, I think that shouldn't be the top priority, of course, because you're just starting. What you in the first few years are critical for you to learn new stuff. So we should focus on the company that will give you more space to learn whatever, that will have better mentors if you want, that will allow you to do stuff and to take chances and to take risks. Instead of going to a company that we're going to work in a very focused area and just a little bit, and that is very hierarchical, in a way that seniors don't listen to the junior people. So one way to find out this, actually, an easy way, is to have internships in the summer. So while you're studying, if you're going to work for a few companies, like doing at least 2 years, completely different types of companies, you'll understand where do you feel comfortable, where do you feel that you have more to learn. And so an advice would always be, before you finish school, go do some summer internships. More and more companies are doing it, and it's a really nice way to get introduced to the job world, if you want.
I think, I do completely agree with you. I think this is very, very important. It gives you experience. It gives you, a better understanding of how things work. So I think it's important that it's perhaps essential, actually, that you get some internship and get to learn different companies and cultures. Okay, so now moving a little bit the focus of our conversation, we were talking about recruiting. We're talking about advice to the students. During the last questions and the answers that you provided, you mentioned that kind of the world is changing a little bit on the company side. Okay, the way you work, the culture, the hierarchy is more flat, etc. So there's a number of things that are happening on the company side. And on the other side, you have the universities, Católica being one, you have others in Portugal, in the world. So if you had to discuss a little bit about universities and in the way we work. What do you think, and what would be your suggestions, or perhaps your ideas on how university may want to adapt to this new reality of these new companies and the new way of working?
Yeah, that's an interesting question coming from you, to be honest. I think schools are starting to do their way. They understood that they need to adapt to everything. I think Católica is actually doing a good job. I think business schools in general are going a little bit, at least in Portugal, doing a better job than tech schools from that perspective, at least from my knowledge, my limited knowledge. So I'm sorry if I'm saying something wrong. But you need first to open to the world. So having classes in English, having people from different countries, it will help you out to have different views. And because we live in a globalized world, and if you think that when you go to work, you need to have that perspective that there's much more, and the potential is much more outside Portugal than in Portugal, to be honest.
Okay.
So schools need to start to collaborate more with companies, but sometimes what I feel is that they have a very close package, and they say, okay, I'm going to work with 10 companies all in the same way, and there's no adaptation to what is to each company reality. Second part, I could say, like if you go through the syllabus of the degree, is it adapted to the new reality? For instance, maybe it's easier for me to talk about in developer. Are the language that are being taught in the university are the correct ones? Are the ones that are being used by companies? Or even in these structures, do students, when they come out of Católica or whatever, do they actually know that there's other type of structures to implement in a company? So besides the traditional holacracy being the one that we use, being the tribes that Spotify uses, doesn't really matter. Do students know that? Are they adapted to this new reality or not? Do they know what is sprints? Because sprints and Scrum, Agile Scrum, are things that started actually in the tech world, but more and more are being used by the business world. So I'm questioning if schools are already teaching that part. And then the other interesting part is that, and the challenge for universities that comes with the pandemic is the online, training or formation or an alternative or not? And there's some schools, like at least in the IT world in Lisbon, there's the 42 already as an alternative to going to the university. So it's a completely different approach. It's also a 3-year program. So I think universities will need to adapt to alternatives. So either because the online is an alternative, so maybe I can go through business school without leaving Portugal and the school is in a different country, or because the competition will not be from universities itself, but by different concepts. So,
wow. So you mentioned 42. 42 is a upskilling, reskilling kind of school that allows, and correct me if I'm wrong, that allows people to have programming skills after to enter a job market, correct?
So 42, what they do is, and it was started in Paris with a multimillionaire. They have a lot of schools already in the world. So it's free of charge. So the sponsors support the schools. So, and for you to get in, you need to go go through a challenge. It doesn't really matter if you know how to code or not. It's a logical challenge. And then you go through a boot camp if you want of 1 month, and then after that you will get in. And there's no teachers, so it's gamified. Teachers work with each other. Students work with each other and try to learn. It takes 3 years to go through on average. So it's a completely different approach. And what I believe the world will look like is like different people adapt to different systems. So some people are quite good in being in a class, listening to a teacher. Other persons that might be brilliant, but don't really adapt to that model. So the other type of model much more hands-on, much more, adjusted to that person. What this means with this, and 42 as an example, is that we probably, from a talent pool perspective, we could recover a lot of people that are doing not so interesting jobs just by making the teaching system different, or having different systems in place that will adapt to different type of people. Like this is happening like in schools, and like in high schools, in kindergarten schools. So the traditional model in many schools, it's changing in some schools. And what you could see, and I can tell that because of kids that I have, some kids adapt better to one type of system, the traditional system, and others will adapt better to others. That implies that they need to work a lot with their colleagues in groups, So I think teaching, learning will need to adapt to this, because the current thinking, it's one size fits all, is leaving a lot of people outside the system.
Super interesting. When you mentioned 42, there is also perhaps not exactly the same, but organization like Lowagon, like Aaron Hack, this kind of organization as well, that perhaps are not doing exactly the same thing, but they're also allowing people to go and reskill, in a different way. But tell me one thing, the thing about the universities and the schools in the past were that if you had this, this stamp on your CV about a specific university, etc., it would be easier for you to get in. What you're talking now about these different streams of education is that you, as a potential recruiter, you are open not only to recruit from the classical, normal, schools that have been there for years, but you're also open to recruit from these new kind of education systems or models. Is that correct?
Yes, much more open, because the experience that we have is that we find very interesting talent from different models. It doesn't the most maybe exotic example is I have one of our developers is a guy that took psychology. He worked as a psychologist in prisons, and then he decided to change his life. He knew how to code a little bit, and he actually transformed his life, and now he's a developer. And he doesn't have any formal education for coding, He's self-learning, and it's quite really good. But so there's all these alternative programs. To be very honest, we never consider sponsoring the ones that take in 2 months. You have a developer. All this might work. Not sure if it will work for everybody. But when you have this new concept that it takes 3 years, I buy it. That's why we are sponsoring the 42, because and 3 years preparing somebody, very practical. I'm really curious in 3 years to see what will come out. Because I want to compare if that type of education will bring different views, more diversity, if you want, to the company. Okay. So maybe going back to your original question, maybe universities need to offer 2 types of approach, to students. Maybe you have the classical approach, some persons will like, and you have a more hands-on approach, other students will like more.
I think this is something that, talking about, perhaps I don't have all the grasp of what's happening at the school, but this is something that people are looking at very seriously, because, it's linked to what happened in the last month of the COVID-19 stuff, etc., and how people are learning, etc. So I think now it's the point of, really looking at that and seeing, identifying alternatives actually for people to learn. So I think this is a hot topic in education. Okay, and I think it's going to be also a hot topic for survival. So in the next 5-10 years, these new models will perhaps condition the survival of some schools. So I think it's interesting. So Now moving a little bit to, so we discussed the students, we discussed how you recruit, we discussed about education. Let's now go back to what we're facing on a day-to-day, which is the pandemic and the restrictions that we have, etc. In this growth that you mentioned and this recruiting needs that you have, and the next questions will be a little bit, I will suggest that we go on the pandemic and how it's affecting a little bit the business. Was hiring more difficult for you with the pandemic, or you didn't see any impact on that?
So we did actually, maybe from a perspective that we didn't thought it would so happen, but yes, some logic. We talked with other companies, and it seemed like this was a real trend in the market. We start receiving less CVs, and the reason, at least the reason we can explain for the other companies, is people we live in a very liquid market, so people change jobs quite easily. And with the pandemic, some people start thinking about risk, became more risk averse, and about not changing job. So people, although they might be not as happy, it seemed like they were, at least they were safe, because they were working for whatever company for a few years. They were not going to be fired. And then when the pandemic made something visible, that some companies had to fire people. So people were less willing to take the chance to change job during the pandemic. So that's what we felt. And now what we are discussing internally is how can we transmit a message that actually not only we are not going to fire people, we actually are growing, and so that's a different type of message that was not needed before March this year.
Okay, and I think what you've seen, it's always easy a posteriori to discuss and argue, but I think it makes a little bit of sense because of all the circumstances that we have with COVID and the limitation. People want to control a little bit more and avoid exposure to risk. So I think it makes perhaps a little bit of sense.
Total sense. Yeah. It's total only logic. I understand that.
Yeah. So and the second part of the pandemic, besides the recruiting, is we almost all working from home from time to time because of the restrictions and implied by the DGS, etc. So we changed from a world where we had our kind of a desk, some kind of space for us, eventually the pictures of our family and friends and dogs, etc. And now we working from home. Working from home, and do you think that it's going to be something that is to stay? And what I heard, and especially from other companies and other students, that some of these people will actually pretty happy at home and may want to continue working from home. So how do you guys at Mercedes-Benz IO, are you looking at that? Do you think this is a fad? It's going to stop? People will want to come back? Or are you providing support for the people working at home, etc.? And it means a lot of things as well. Sometimes, people working at the office, they like the office because they meet people, they discuss. Working at home, you may be lonely, you may have, so how do you see and act upon this new reality?
Yep. So I think that's a huge question, and that's the biggest question ever. So before the pandemic, we had a policy where you could work on average 1 day a week at home. Mm-hmm. We were thinking about increasing, and then the pandemic, and then everybody went home immediately. And from a productivity perspective, if you want, it worked amazingly. So there was no real impact on that topic. And on the short term, it doesn't really have an impact in the culture of the company because it's everybody understand what's going on. But going for the future, you need to think what is the real impact of having a remote company. So, and it's not yet totally decided. Of course, we'll have a very flexible policy, that's no doubt. So the pandemic has that effect. home office will be something that will exist now, but we need to give the freedom of the people to go to the office, because that's where a lot of things happen. A lot of the culture of the values need to be face to face. At least that's in my belief. So the challenge is, how do you mix a situation where there's a lot of people? Some people go every day to the office. Some go just 1 or 2 days, and others would go just 1 month or so. So we don't have a final answer now. I never saw a company that solved this issue right now. To be honest, we are trying crazy new stuff. Now we've built like a TV set in the company, so we can do, because everybody's tired of this, communication in Zoom. At least I'm really tired. So we need to find ways to communicate, to talk with each other, because something is quite obvious. It's missing. It's everybody being remote is much heavier in your day-to-day, because if I want to talk with somebody, I need to book a call. It's not just a matter of standing up, going for a coffee, having a 1-minute chit chat. I need to book a call, and this is it will be especially hard for students that go to the market, because the way you learn and you grow is because by being close to more experienced people. And if you are at home, it's much harder, So my advice, if you're going to start working, don't stay at home. Avoid to stay at home, because it will harm you in the long term. You will not get into it. And then if you are a new joiner, and if you want to really go into the culture, to take advantage, to know everything, staying at home, it's an issue for you. It will be an issue for you. Yeah. It will be much harder. So there's not yet a final solution. Remote home office, it will stay. But now we need to find a way to make the office pleasant, so you want to go there. The way we see it is, the office is no longer the place where you go to work every day. The office will become a place where you have workshops, where you meet with other people. Yeah. So maybe having a desk for everybody is not as critical, but having spaces for people to meet up, to organize events, to do workshops, it's much more critical to have the right assets in place to allow for this type of activities. So that will stay. It's not a fad. People will use more and more because of the flexibility, of course.
This is interesting what you're saying, because I read an article in The Economist like a few months ago on the lawyers that were starting to work, and they had to start working as almost being remote. And they mentioned it was very, very difficult, because there are a few points that they highlighted in this article. Was that networking is super important, not only to gain more knowledge, as you mentioned, but also to get promoted and to get more visibility in the company. So this is one of the points that when you do only online, you may be missing. And I understand your suggestion on moving when possible to the office to get with the other people, etc., to learn and other things. So
because new ideas, new approaches come. It's not that comes because we talk with each other. So it's critical. We as humans, we need to talk with each other, and that's how, somebody said that, and I remember, why don't I do it this, or why don't I do it that way? And remotely, it's much harder to have this informal communication and to come up with new things and to grow. I think in the long term, always being remote, it will slow down your growth.
Yeah, some people have been discussing that, as you mentioned, the office may turn into more a gathering place where you have the workshop, you discuss eventually when you have coffee with the others, etc. Some meeting rooms around, and fewer actually desks or personal desk is something that is almost gone now. We all have a shared desk, etc. But more and more, I think the space is going to be taken by places where you can do sprints with your team in a room, do things like that. And I think maybe perhaps I'm eager to see how companies like yours and others will solve that. But I believe that being together with teams at the office would be the value of the office. And then after you can break out and work in your own place, but being together, I think, will be the office. Yeah.
And just for so we are going to move to a new office next year in Hub Creative do Beato. And the way we had the office set up, it was actually it was before the pandemic, but we actually had as many desks as many extra seats. We have the same number of desks as extra seats, meaning you could be working at your desk, or you could be working in a sofa, you could be working in a stand-up place, or you could be working in meeting rooms. And so we were already prepared a little bit for this. And then the pandemic, maybe we still should even reduce more the desks and have more this space. And they don't need to be meeting rooms, They could actually be open spaces where you have a round table or a mix of sofas. But we need to give you space for you to write on the wall, or to have video screens, or but to make it easy. Like in the future office, you will have a garden, a really cool garden. So why don't you go meet up at the garden and talk there? Or we're going to have a huge staircase that you could actually go to the staircase and do some workshop, and to do the sprint change, and to do whatever. So I think from that perspective, we were lucky, and it's a really not good thing to say that we are lucky in the pandemic, but that the office is not yet finished. So there's still some adaptations we can easily do for what's coming next after the pandemic is controlled and over.
Wow. I think we almost closing now with all these comments that and this these points that you touched on the recruiting, on what you guys are doing during the pandemics, the remote work, etc. I mean, I think really it was a pleasure for me to talk to you again and discuss these points. I'm really looking forward to see how you will be actually not implementing, but doing all this stuff about remote work, the different way of recruiting, the interaction with 42 other universities, It really looks like you're in the forefront of what's happening. So I think it was a pleasure to discuss with you now, Alexandre, and also with you through Mercedes-Benz IO. And it was a pleasure. I don't know if you have other points that you would like perhaps to highlight or to close on your side. I'm going to leave the closure on your side. So.
Okay. Now, so thank you again for the invitation. It's always interesting to discuss these topics. No, I think we covered pretty much everything. So if thinking about this podcast more oriented to students, I think the goal is actually to make them think what do they want to do and what they want to achieve, and try it out. So I think again, as in everything in life, you need to try, fail, and try again. And that's why internships are useful. Try to create companies are useful, because every time you try something new, you will learn. So that's a little bit what my final advice. And again, thank you so much for this invitation, Pierre.
Okay, thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you. You too. Ciao. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Talk about podcast.